Hello, everyone. Today we will be observing the life of a young boy by the name of Patrick, who lived in a cruel world amongst his townfolk as a fool in search of the impossible, a way to change fate. There once was a young boy named Patrick who grew up in a small city called Lake Beck, named after the city's nearby lake. You see, Patrick was a boy who grew up with no family, no friends, and hell, not even an animal companion to keep him company on his darkest and loneliest nights. He did, however, find an outlet that he could loose himself in for hours on most days, something that could truly take his mind off of his terrible situation and give him the happiness that everyone else seemed to have: fishing. Patrick would sometimes fish from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., singing his favorite songs he heard around the city and thinking about all the fish he could catch in the lake. He often thought about his largest catch, which was a relatively small walleye, and thought about all the possibilities that would come if he was able to catch an even bigger fish. Patrick would often get discouraged, though, as he had nobody to help him catch the bigger fish in the lake. So, every night before he slept, he wished for a genie who would give him 3 special wishes so he could finally get the tools he needed to catch a bigger fish. On this particular night, Patrick saw a shooting star and thought, "This is the moment I've been waiting for my whole life. The hunger, the hurt, the loneliness. All of it was so that I could be rewarded with my wish to have a genie." He then quickly shut his eyes and wished upon the star that when he opened his eyes there would be an all-gold lamp to rub. Patrick, filled with excitement and joy, then opened his eyes only to find nothing but the same mud and grass he laid his head on. Patrick then wept as he thought that even shooting stars were simply passing by to laugh at his misfortune. Patrick then closed his eyes and slept, only to dream of another shooting star that would tell him to think wisely about his decisions, though Patrick didn't really listen and told the shooting star to stop tormenting him. The next morning, when Patrick awoke, his mind immediately filled with the memories of all the terrible things that had happened to him, and thought that his entire life was one big joke that someone was playing on him simply for a little laugh. He then grabbed his fishing pole and ran as fast as he could to the lake to try and take his mind off of all the things that had happened to him throughout his life. When he arrived at the lake, he quickly gathered some worms from the muddy ground, hooked the bait, and cast the line into the water, hoping that at least the one thing he loves above all things, fishing, wouldn't turn its back on him. But as he stood there desperately, there was nothing. No nibble on the hook, no fish brushing against the bait, not even any wind to keep Patrick company on this day of despair. He then frantically pulled the line out of the water and recast it over and over again, wanting something, anything, to just go right for once in his life. But of course, there was nothing. Patrick then looked up to the sky and shouted, "Please just let me have this one thing," as tears strolled down his face. But still no answer. Patrick then one last time hopelessly threw the line in the water, wishing for it all to end. Just then Patrick heard a strange sound come from the water, as though the hook caught something, but it wasn't like anything he had heard before. Wiping the tears from his face, Patrick used all his strength to pull whatever caught his line out of the water, but it seemed as though it didn't want to move. Using all of his strength to pull the line out of the water, he pulled and pulled until he was jerked back and fell into the mud with his rod snapping in half. Patrick then angrily picked up the rod and threw it as far and as hard as he could into the water, losing his balance and falling face first into the thick mud that covered the ground. Patrick then and there decided that he would simply give up and decided to lay there in the mud and let himself fall victim to the elements, figuring that he would go on to lead a pointless life, filled with nothing but misery and despair, all the way up until he drew his last breath. He then fell into a deep sleep and dreamed of a voice saying, "Find it, you will be set free," before hearing a loud boom and waking up to find himself in the middle of a horrific thunderstorm, with winds that could cut through trees and rain that felt like large stones falling from the sky. Patrick stubbornly laid there in the mud and declared that if this is what fate holds, then he will gladly let it run its course. But before he could even finish the thought, he saw an almost blinding light beaming from the lake in the exact spot his fishing line had gotten stuck earlier. It was as though for the first time in his life, Patrick knew in his gut for sure that his prayers were finally being answered, that this was his one golden opportunity that he could not let go to waste. He knew that what was in the lake just a few feet in front of him was the answer to all of his hopes and dreams, the magic lamp. He immediately jumped headfirst into the water and desperately swam to the shining light that only grew brighter as he got close. But after what seemed like hours, Patrick finally got to it. He dove under the water and reached for the lamp only for it to sink deeper into the ground as he got closer. But Patrick knew that he couldn't let it go, even if it were to sink to the earth's core, because this was his last shot at a better life. So he swam longer and longer until finally he was able to grab the lamp and rub it. But to Patrick's surprise, nothing happened, so he frantically swam to the surface with the lamp in hand. He then surfaced, frantically trying to catch his breath like an exhausted dog while rubbing the lamp. But once again there was no reaction. No genie, no 3 wishes, no free ticket out of the constant cycle of despair, not even a reward for his efforts. Just a useless lamp that was probably thrown out years ago as someone else's trash. Patrick then began to laugh at his own misfortune as the storm raged on, thinking to himself that he was truly deserving of the title of a fool, for thinking he was destined for anything other than being a joke, deserving of more in life. His laughter then turned to sorrow as he wept, realizing that even the one thing he loved the most in the world, fishing, had turned its back on him, leaving him completely alone with nothing. He then swam to the edge of the lake, got out, and with a broken heart he found a tree, sat down and closed his eyes and dreamt. He dreamt up the same lamp he had encountered in the lake just moments before, but this time it was different. When he lifted the lamp this time it was much heavier than before, so he gave it a rub, even though at that point he had no hope of a genie popping out. But to his surprise, out came a spirit-like man from inside the lamp asking young Patrick what his 3 wishes were. Patrick, in full disbelief, asked the genie where he had been all this time. The genie replied, saying, "I was waiting on a master fitting of my services." The genie then told Patrick that he only had 3 wishes and to choose wisely because these were the only wishes he would ever get, as he could not make a wish for more wishes. Patrick, still in disbelief, told the genie his first wish. "Genie, I want to be able to catch all the fish in the lake." And the genie snapped his fingers and told him his wish was granted. Then Patrick said, "For my second wish, I would like to have an unbreakable fishing rod to catch fish with." And the genie granted the wish. "And for my final wish," Patrick exclaimed, "I wish to become a genie so I can grant as many wishes as I please." And the genie granted Patrick's final wish before vanishing away, almost as if he never existed. Patrick could barely contain his excitement as he knew all along that this was his destiny, not to be laughed at for his misfortune, but instead to have the power to obtain whatever he wished for at the snap of his fingers. He laughed at fate as he thought about all the things he went through in his life, all the pain, loneliness, humiliation, and hopelessness he'd experienced throughout his life was preparing him for this moment. Patrick then began to rejoice his fortune, but soon slowly started to realize that something was off about his predicament. He realized that the last thing he remembered before receiving his wishes was what happened to him at the lake. He then began to feel the all-too-familiar feeling of humiliation as he thought that all of the events that just occurred were simply figments of his imagination, strung together by his saddened heart. Patrick then closed his eyes, waiting to wake up to the same sad life he had grown to hate. But to his surprise, when he opened his eyes, he saw the genie. But something was different. He looked down and quickly realized that the genie was the one holding the lamp that he was once inside. Patrick, feeling very confused, looked down and asked the genie what was happening. The genie responded, "My first, second, and third wishes are to be the richest man alive, to have the most beautiful women by my side, and to live for as long as I want." Patrick then asked again what was happening, and the man responded, "You have taken my place in that awful prison that I have been stuck in for many years. Thank you." Patrick then exclaimed that the man had tricked him into taking his place, but the man quickly reminded Patrick of his last wish. The man then told Patrick that the longer he waited to grant his wish, the longer he would be stuck in the lamp, so Patrick did the only thing he thought he could to free himself and granted the man's wishes, thinking that it would somehow set him free. But to no one's surprise, Patrick was not freed. Patrick, feeling deeply betrayed, demanded the man to trade places with him, but the man cheerfully said no before turning to leave. But before he could, Patrick asked the man one last question. "Why was I led here? Why did you trick me?" The man responded, "I tricked you because I simply wanted to be free." Still unsatisfied, Patrick asked, "But why me?" And the man responded, "Because no one would care if you disappeared, no one would even wonder where you went or if you were safe. I did it because it was your fate all along to be a fool no matter where it led you. Even if it meant looking for a magical lamp that was hidden in a lake, I took your family and appeared in your dreams because you were the only one who was foolish enough to believe the things that were implemented into your mind." The man then turned his back to Patrick and walked into the city as Patrick begged and pleaded for him to trade places with him, but all Patrick was met with was the cool chill of the wind before being sealed in the lamp, awaiting the next fool who would be naive enough to rub the lamp. Hey guys, I would quickly like to say thank you for watching, and that this is the first of many stories and messages that we'll be releasing on this channel. This story in particular is serving as not only my first piece of YouTube content ever, but also an introduction to my channel and what it's about. I will say that in the future, some of the things that we'll release on this channel will dive into much deeper topics. But for now, I will just be releasing simpler stories as I want to get better at storytelling before jumping into said topics. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave some constructive criticism in the comments for me to improve on. Other than that, have a wonderful rest of your morning, evening, or night, and I will see you in the next one.